There you go. All right. Good evening, everybody. All right. I would like to call the November 4th, can't believe it's November, 2024 Franklin Township Board of Supervisors workshop meeting to order at 7 p.m. In attendance is myself, Chairman David Gerstenhaber, Vice Chair Donna D., Supervisors Don Dowling, Jim Johnson, and Betsy Odgers. Also in attendance are Operation Manager Jeff Eastburn, Controller and Office Manager Melissa Ortega, and Township Secretary Stacy Hollis. And there are 6 members of the public. And let's rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Thank you, everybody. All right. So I'd like to open the floor to public comment. This public comment may include any comments relating to tonight's agenda items. Commenters must state their name and whether they are a resident of the township or a non-resident taxpayer in the township. If you do not identify yourself, your comments will not be included in the official minutes. Do we have any comment on tonight's agenda? Okay. There you go. Hello.
My name is John Auerbach, a longtime resident and supervisor for 10 years, 2012 to 2021. During that period, I was directly involved in the annual budget preparation and to ensure that policies established by the board were supported and funded. As a result of this continuous involvement, I was able to reduce township real estate taxes 20% in year 13 to 14. My last year as supervisor, 2021 post-COVID, Melissa Ortega and I prepared the 2022 budget after the township manager left Franklin Township employment. This was no minor task, as the budget had to be created from scratch, and neither of us had done this prior. Related to the current budget, I only have a few short comments, and I have a short opportunity to review it, so my comments are going to be short and of general nature. I may have some comments after the discussion. Based on some preliminary comments from Don about 3 weeks ago, the budget looks very tight, but expenses becoming equal to income. This was not surprising, as I could foresee that coming, developing the 2022 budget. Primary factors appear to be increasing costs of emergency service, a developing enormous cost for the compliance with MS4 stormwater permit and capital expenditures for stream bank restoration projects, millions of dollars over a 5-year period. The board will discuss that this evening, I expect. And the third is a loss of a 2-year supplemental income from the American Rescue Fund, which was $430,000. And this income stream made budgeting in 2021 and 22 very comfortable, but we don't have it. I recommend, you may have already done this, but for the general purpose of some of the public here, I recommend that you prioritize the budget expenses using the following general rules. Identify and code all expenses that support the 4 township core functions, that being infrastructure maintenance, emergency service, traffic safety, land development, and planning. Although MS4 expense is not a core function, it is mandatory by ordinance and therefore must be managed in the same manner as a core function. Please place these expenses aside, as they are generally not subject to cost reduction. All remaining expense items are considered discretionary for the purpose of balancing the budget. Identify and code these items in an order of priority so that they can be evaluated based on the strongest possible need. Focus on reductions, efficiency improvements, or elimination of these items. This is essentially the same method that I used during the tax reduction evaluation back in 2013-14. The budget to spending plan is intended to be a guide for the township, as real income and expenses are engaged monthly during the budget year. And one last thought. I don't mean this to be critical to anybody here. Franklin Township residents have elected supervisors to provide services that they cannot practically do themselves. Residents expect that the township funds will be managed efficiently without waste or excess. So do not lose sight of the fact you're spending public money. I say the following for the purpose of maintaining perspective. It is not intended to be critical of any elected official. The township is not some cottage industry that can spend money on anything that comes to mind. Be careful of input from small specialized group with a single focused objective. Note there are 3,400 registered voters in Franklin Township. One last unrelated item I really want to talk about. Eric Brindle, a former township official, recently passed away October 18th, 24, after a sudden illness. Eric was an excellent supervisor and helpful to all of us. Eric was a sitting supervisor when Penny Shank and I were elected into board in 2011. Eric was very supportive and mentored us as we transitioned into the supervisor role. Eric was a thoughtful, honest, and decent man. I'll miss his wit and counsel. Eric served on the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors. Eric was an active official who loved Franklin Township, with great energy in protecting Franklin Township. Eric had a strong background in real estate, was intelligent and street smart. I thoroughly enjoyed working with Eric on the Board of Supervisors. Without getting into a lengthy discussion of Eric's successes, there is one standout accomplishment. Eric was instrumental in the driving force that established the FSA as we know it today. Thank you.
Thank you, John. I appreciate the comments.
I just want to make one comment, and I'll repeat it again later. But John, you stated that, and I know this is the way the budget is presented, that our income equals our expenses. I wish that was true. Actually, the fact of the matter, and we will get into this in detail, that the amount of money that we need to budget for MS4 is not adequate in this budget. We don't have it. So we're actually, our expenses as related to the unfunded mandate. Thankfully, we don't need to pay it next year. It's something that will happen over time.
Yeah.
We based on our understanding of what those expenses are, we do not have that money. That doesn't mean we're not working on grants and working on other ways. You guys, I know you always hear about ideas of grants because I think you're the kings of grants for the fire companies. But I just want to be clear, folks. We're doing the best we can. But I wish our expenses equal our income. We're not there, and we have to figure that out. All right, I just want to make that clear.
All right. Thank you, John. Thank you, Donna. Any other public comment before we move on to our first agenda item?
Sir, could you take your own
Okay. So not hearing anything, let's move on to our budget discussion. Let's start with West Grove Fire Department. We'll talk a little bit about your proposal for this year, West Grove.
So
Oh, we'll need you to come to a mic, so you can either stand there or we have a. There you go.
We appreciate the continued support from Franklin Township. Eric Brindle and John Auerbach were supervisors back in 2012 and 2013. When we created the EMS formula, we had no public EMS funding prior to that. So I remember the Franklin Township Board of Supervisors led by John and Eric as supporters at that time. So, sad to hear of Eric's passing, but we appreciate all that you guys did. Thank you. Yeah, that is sad. It's tough. Not to bring up a sad occasion, I apologize, but on behalf of the West Grove Fire Company, we appreciate the opportunity to talk to you guys tonight. I feel, we've been to all 7 municipalities that we serve. This is the last of the 7th that we have to appear at to talk about the budget. So we've gone over these numbers upside down and backwards. You're in the same, I hear unfunded mandates, just to give you an idea, one of the unfunded mandates that we have to live by is that our turnout gear, the fire coats and the pants that we wear and the helmets and the boots have a 10-year shelf life, regardless if it's been in one fire in 10 years or if a firefighter's worn it 10 times a year into a real fire. It's done after 10 years. You know, these are the unfunded mandates that we have, and a full set of gear is now $9,000 per firefighter, you know? So just because it turns 10 years old, we have to turn that stuff over. So I hear these unfunded mandates and it makes my spine tingle, you know, that we have to, there's no reason that a 10-year-old set of gear should have to be retired, especially at the dollars that we're talking about. So whether it's MS4, whether we're talking about fire gear, we're all in the same boat together. That being said, you can see the numbers that we forwarded over. Melissa and I talked briefly this afternoon to make sure that you had our numbers. The increase that you're looking at for this year mainly is what we've been seeing over the past 10 years, which is shifting from an all-volunteer fire department and EMS department to now where next year the budget calls for 70% of the time we will have career firefighters in station. So we about 30% of the time in 2025 will still be staffed solely by volunteers. Now, when we have career firefighters in the station, we're talking about a 3-person crew, the very minimum at one station. That's not staffing all 3 stations. That's not putting enough people on duty. It's the very bare minimum to answer the fire calls that about 80% of the time one fire engine can handle. So a fire alarm, a CO detector, a minor crash. These are all things that we have to send a fire engine out to. And this is that crew can cover about 80% of our calls without help, without the volunteers coming in from home. But there are still 20% of the calls. We're going to run about 800 fire calls this year. All right. So you're looking really at about 150 calls or so where we still need to staff a 3rd and a 4th truck out of all 3 stations. So the money that we're looking at here, the increase mainly is to pay for staffing. It's increasing the firefighter staffing on the fire side. The EMS increase is about $7,000. That is really keeping up with, that's not adding any further additional staffing. The EMS staff has been fully paid now for 10 years. So that's not increasing any further numbers. It's really just to keep up with cost of living expenses, increases in health insurance for the employees. We're now up to about 70 employees. Fortunately, we've been able to cover that with 10 full-timers this year. We're increasing to 16. We're going to convert 6 of the part-timers to full-time in 2025. Right now, with the amount of hours we have for fire and EMS in 2024, it would take 38 full-time equivalents to cover all of the open hours on a weekly basis at West Grove. So we're doing it with a largely part-time workforce. This workforce often works multiple jobs in multiple different fire departments. We have firefighters who work down in Howard County and Baltimore, who then come up in Moonlight and work some hours here for West Grove. So we're doing a good job at piecing it together right now, but we believe that we need to create more full-time opportunities where West Grove becomes the primary employer and they're more committed to stable staffing. The transient part-time workforce can be difficult. Some weeks we're very well staffed, and then other weeks we're scrounging to try to get the base minimum of covering 2 ambulances and a few fire guys during the daytime during the week. So those are really the numbers that you see represented there for the increase. As far as apparatus, the numbers are skyrocketing. Franklin Township has been excellent over the years. When John was president of the Board of Supervisors and I was chief the first time back in 2013 and 2014, we created an apparatus replacement plan to try to plan out. They were good numbers and they were helpful, but as you know, whether you want to buy a plow for a truck or a work truck, or if you want to buy a fire truck, the price is just skyrocketing. So we bought a fire engine in 2021. We backed it into the firehouse in December of 2021. In July of 2022, we ordered the same exact truck. When it backed in, the 2021 was $711,000. When we signed the contract in July of 2022, that same truck was $946,000. Now we're probably looking, if we signed a contract now, it's well over $1 million for just a basic pumper truck. We just signed a contract for a new ambulance at $350,000. So the prices of these vehicles is skyrocketing. So we have bumped up the apparatus replacement numbers in the budget as well. That number should really be about $500,000 or $525,000 per year, but you'll see it's at 425. We didn't want to bump it up too fast. Our way of offsetting that is to apply for 2% loans from Pennsylvania, from PEMA. We can get a 2% loan to offset the cost of the new pumper truck, which will be delivered next year, and the ambulance. So our goal is to kind of offset some of that cost by using a low interest state loan. So we believe that we can do it with the 425 this year, but those numbers will increase, as well as further career staff coverage come 2026 and 2027. We're going to see increases where we just have to have career staff covering it. With running 800 calls a year, the volunteers are doing an excellent job of covering, but we just can't keep up with the volume. So that's why we have to rely on career staff a little bit more. So those are the big increases that we're looking at in our budget. Do you have any questions?
Comments? So what, yeah, I mean, it's frightening. I mean, we love you guys, right? And John mentioned core functions of the township. We have to get this right. We have to have EMS. We have to have fire. There is no doubt about it. So when it comes to looking at our budget and saying, who do we fund? How do we fund? It's you guys. And of course we have a piece of our taxes that is allocated to you. But it no longer covers. It no longer covers what you need. And the message I'm hearing from you is that we can expect increases again next year. So this year was like about 10%, 11%. And next year may even it will be at least that, if not more, because you're trying to move into and we're going to have to find it. I don't know where we're going to find it.
This is same exact conversation that we've had with every other township. Yeah. And we don't come to you with this request lightly. We completely understand that you have a fiduciary responsibility to your taxpayers. We understand that. And we don't come here lightly and expect a free handout or anything. But the bottom line, it's a service that we're having to transition to career staff. And with that comes exponential cost. And that's literally where we're at. So it's like I spoke to the other townships. If there are, parts where you say, this is it, there's a break point. I understand there's going to be a moment where you can no longer afford. Then we have to sit down as a group and decide, okay, well, where are we going to cut service? At what point there's no trends that we can follow. It's not like we can staff stronger on one day, knowing that another day isn't, we can't trend anything. The hours of the day we watch, we're about 2/3 busier between 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. Monday through Friday. The weekends and the evenings were a little bit slower, but the problem is that we still get house fires. We still get bad accidents. We still have heart attacks, and our grandparents fall and break their hip in the middle of the night. So it has to be staffed 24/7. We beef it up a little bit during the daytime, during the week, because we know that that's a trendier time or a busier time on the trends. But the bottom line is so if we get to the point where you can't afford any more, then we as a group need to decide where are those cuts going to be. And it will be in service delivery. We'll have to work on that together as a group.
In the past, one of the best ways to control the cost was having a lot of volunteers. These volunteers every year are getting fewer and fewer. My understanding, there's a lot of pressures on people's time, and my understanding was that there was a lot of training. The amount of training one has to go through has become excessive. At least that's the word I've heard in the past, is that it might be a bit excessive. Things like, you need to have high-rise training and that kind of thing. And when you're in a municipality that doesn't have anything higher than 3 stories, you're like, well, why do we need to spend hundreds of hours in high-rise training? Previously, there was talk about there might have been some movement in helping out smaller municipality firefighters and the training they're required. Has there been any movement on that where we might be able to make it easier for people to become volunteer firefighters, particularly now that I'm sure, like you said, every township of our size is facing the same budgetary issues. Mm-hmm. They all have MS4, they all have firefighter, it's a serious issue. So I don't know if there's anything going on in Pennsylvania to help.
Ironically, in the state of Pennsylvania, there is no minimum standard for what a firefighter is. There's just the Commonwealth is so vast, the finances are different, the fire departments are all different. So there is no written minimum requirement for a firefighter. Here in Chester County, and specifically with, I won't speak on behalf of Avondale, but with West Grove and Avondale, our minimum staffing for a fire or minimum training requirement for a firefighter is to have the firefighter 1 certification. That's a state and national certification that we would send a volunteer. They would go to the fire academy during the evenings and on the weekend for a full semester. All right. So fall semester, spring semester. And that's a 200-hour class, all right, and it trains them in many different things that don't pertain to anything in Franklin Township, but there certainly are some benefits. And mainly speaking, they can become an interior structure firefighter,
Right.
and that's the biggest nugget. So we use the term suppression level firefighters here at West Grove. So in order to staff a fire engine, we require that the unit has 3 suppression level firefighters on a unit when it leaves. Now, back in the day when we had plenty of volunteers, to leave with 5 and 6 members on the truck was pretty common. We now pretty much run 3-man crews solely. All right. That puts a lot of stress and strain on the 3 people that were there. We just had a fire on Halloween evening in London Grove Township in a house right during trick-or-treating time at 7:15. Oh my goodness. Yeah, it was unbelievable. And how no kids got run over by a fire truck. And the house was really on fire. Their garage caught on fire, right during the middle of trick-or-treating night.
Oh my God.
So running 3-people crews or 3-man crews to mitigate these emergencies that's the base of what the community can afford. I would love to have a 4th firefighter on each unit, but the prices are just, astronomical. So this is where we're at. So the minimum standard is to have a firefighter go to a full semester. And sadly, here in Franklin Township and London, Britain and New London, just north of you, the folks who are buying these homes and moving into this area no longer are volunteers. I moved here to Penn Township 20 years ago from Delaware County. I was already a firefighter there. I had grown up in it. It was part of my blood, Unfortunately, those people are becoming very few and far between. The folks who are buying your houses in Franklin Township, they're not coming down to the firehouse. We built this firehouse right down the street in 2012. It was a great idea. West Grove did it very successfully in New London back in 1993 with the second station right behind the 7-Eleven on 896. And it was a real success. That's my home station. I bought a new house, that was brand new construction on Earl Hatton's farm. Upset many people when they built it, but that's how this all occurred. And here I am and became that station was very successful, and it is still today. But unfortunately, we built the London Britain station. We have a core group of 6 active volunteers there, but we've had trouble growing that station because the folks who are now moving in here and volunteerism as a whole. I mean, we're paying little league coaches now.
Yeah.
You see every volunteer organization is hurting. It's not just volunteer firefighters.
Yeah.
It's every volunteer organization. But then when you couple the training on top of it, we just can't get the numbers that we need. And then of course now we ran 600 calls. We ran 600 fire calls in 2022. We ran 723 last year. We're going to run over 800 this year. So you can see the algorithm's backwards. We're getting busier with fewer people, and it just puts that much more of a strain on our volunteers. So that's why you're seeing that shift, and these numbers are going up, and there's going to be further increases in the future. Now, I will tell you at West Grove, we have applied for the SAFER grant, which is it's a federal grant, and it's to help offset the cost for staffing for fire only. It doesn't help with EMS staffing, but fire only. So we've applied for that. That's to put on 6 full-time firefighters. We're hoping to get the grant. If we do, that would be a $1.4 million grant. So that would be a huge relief. But unfortunately, we can't plan on it. So this budget's not factoring that in as of right now. Sadly, that grant has become very scrutinized, and there was only 82 awards given out last year nationwide. So we did hire a grant writer to help us with that process. So we're hoping that we positioned ourselves correctly, but there's no guarantee there. And if we do get it, believe me, I'll make sure because we'll be sending off fireworks and bells, right?
Yeah,
So
that would be fantastic.
yeah, it would be fantastic. But unfortunately, You know, I don't
No,
have, I don't have much faith in the federal government right now, so it is what it is. So do you have any other questions as far as?
I have a question real quick. This is just curiosity too. Do you have with the career firefighters, do you have a problem getting those into? I mean,
Yes, yeah, and
that's
you
what I
know,
would figure, yeah.
part of the, Guy and I will talk a little bit later about our, you know, the endeavor of West Grove and Avondale starting to talk about whether we should merge or whether we should, you know, become one department because we're fighting the same battle. We can't even, we're paying people, we're increasing the dollar an hour amount to try to attract new candidates. And like Avondale, we're having difficulty attracting career staff, you know, people who want to come, and we're willing to pay, you know, we're willing to pay up to $28 an hour, which isn't as much as you can get at the city. You know, if you go to Wilmington City or Chester, or you go, you know, go down to one of the big Maryland departments, you can make a little bit more. But $28 an hour is a decent wage here, you know, but we're still having trouble, you know, getting folks to sign on.
And then one more question.
Mhm.
I know you go out with your with your volunteer, I'm sorry, like your letters for personal
Fundraising.
fundings, yeah.
Mm.
What percentage of personal funding do you get compared to like what the townships pay?
Oh, you mean in total dollars?
Yeah, in dollars.
So-
Is it very small?
So you see the numbers there. We're asking the townships for 1.1 million in fire funding and 616,000 EMS funding. So we're 1.8 million, you know, we're asking
Right.
in funding, and we get about 200,000 back in donations between both drives.
200,000.
So yeah, between
It's
the
just
EMS
two per
and
year?
it's the
Oh,
EMS
it's
and
separate.
6 months later, they space them out 6
Yeah,
months
okay,
apart.
I got you now.
So the fire drive is half the year and EMS is the other half. So it's 200,000, give or take 10 grand, but that's about what we get back, which we feel pretty fortunate that is,
Not
you know,
bad,
that the
yeah.
community sends that much back. There's many departments around us that don't get that. And certainly down in Delaware and Newcastle County and out in Delaware County, they don't get anything near that. So we feel pretty fortunate that that's good. As far as the percentage that comes back, I think it's 15%.
Yeah,
Of
that's
what
not
we
bad.
send out,
That's
you
good.
know?
Yeah.
So I think we're pretty fortunate, you know, in that regard. So it is, as far as other fundraisers, John and I talked about this when we were coming up with this plan, but the days of the volunteer firefighter standing out with a boot or doing a chicken barbecue or a bingo night, they're over. We have to be ready and train and run calls. And that's really as much as we can ask our volunteers to do. So at this point, it's going to be through donations. Fortunately, our career staff are amazing hustlers when it comes to the ambulances and moving patients back and forth because we have no local hospital. We think we might get one next year, maybe 2026 is my guess. But our crews do an amazing job at covering as many calls as they do. And there's a backflow to that. So when we do transport, we can bill the patient's insurance companies. So about 60% of all of our EMS calls, we transport to the hospital, which allows us to bill the insurance companies. And that represents about a little over $1 million in income. Yeah, so fortunately with our crews working hard, and these are folks who didn't grow up here, they're not Avon Grove high school kids, but they come here, they work because they want to be a nurse or a doctor, or they want to move on and become a paramedic, but they work on our BLS unit as EMT for a couple of years, and they really show pride in the organization. And Gary behind me here, I apologize with my back to him, but he's our EMS chief, and he does a fantastic job at moving these folks in and out. And with those folks hustling and bringing in an extra $1 million a year, it really does. I mean, that represents, you know, almost 25% of our income is just from ambulance reimbursement alone. So it really does help offset the cost. You have any other questions for me?
I don't want you to, any of my comments taken in the wrong way. We really do appreciate what you do, and we think you do a great job.
Wasn't taken that way at all. No. And you know what? I would be, you know, I would probably, if you didn't take it serious and ask these tough questions, you know, I think that we would be wrong. You owe it to your taxpayers. And honestly, we're in this together. This is a partnership with you guys. It's not an adversarial relationship whatsoever. And you can be sure that whatever service we're going to deliver, we're going to come to that conclusion together. All right.
How much of your budget is administration and, like you say, billing for the ambulance?
Mhm.
How much of your budget is secretarial or
Yeah.
administrative Is that going
It's
up or
actually-
is it?
It's actually very low, and it's too low, to be honest with you. So in this next budget, yeah, in our next budget, so some of you know Tina Chrisman, if you've had any interaction with her. She's our office manager, but she's part-time. She works 2.5 days a week. This is a $3.5 million company, being run by a volunteer fire chief, a volunteer president, and a part-time. So really what we're looking at next year is looking at hiring a full-time administrator, and, offering a decent salary, something like $100,000 a year to bring somebody in to start running this operation. And then the other thing is in 2026, I keep telling everybody, look out for a full-time fire chief at that time. I'm a physician assistant that I work in the emergency room. I'm going to leave here in the next 20 minutes to go work night shift at the hospital. So those days are coming to an end where you can get somebody to do this. Those days are not happening. I mean, how many $4 million companies do you know that are being run by a volunteer guy that works in the ER overnight? It doesn't happen, so I know I'm being rhetorical, but the bottom line is like, this is where we're evolving to. Right now, our administrative overhead is extremely low. It's going to go up though, and it has to. I mean, these numbers are astronomical, right? So we have to get full-time folks in here to take care of that. Just like you guys have grown over the years, you have 3 employees sitting here right now. It's the same thing. You're going to see that same trend with us.
Maybe you guys can share that.
Well, that's, why we're here. Why we're here. So Avondale and West Grove have entered discussions to, formally come up with a cooperative agreement. And Guy and so the 2 fire chiefs and the 2 presidents got together this summer. We started some preliminary discussions. And as recently as last week, we had our first meeting with both organizations together. 90 members were in attendance from career employees and volunteers alike. And it was an excellent meeting, very positive. I think things are going to move relatively quickly. I think the finances are going to drive it because their townships and boroughs are in the same spot as you guys are. It's a resounding theme across the state. You guys are involved in PSATs. You know exactly what I'm talking about. This is not foreign to just right here in Southern Chester County. So we're going to do the best we can at our And it's not going to make things cheaper for you. Hopefully it spreads the money out a little bit further. So the sharp increases are a little less tolerable, a little less easier to take than what you've been suffering from over the past 10 years. So, and that's it for me. I'll sit down and let Guy have it.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Follow it.
I was gonna say ditto.
It's like we got to come up with some more tough questions.
Yeah, except
folks.
your increases are greater. That's the
Yeah.
problem. You're in the 45% range
Yeah.
here, so.
Okay, well, as Eric said, the reason why we're there is the same thing. We are in the process of trying to increase staffing. Right now, we only have 3 overnight. We want to bump that up to 4, at least Monday through Friday. And it'll be from 6 PM to 10, or from 10 PM to 6 AM, I'm sorry. That's where we want to start at. So that'll give us, like I say, 2 people there for the ambulance and 2 people there for the fire truck, and hopefully a volunteer shows up in the middle of the night, which usually a couple do. So as Eric said, the minimum staffing is 3, is what the county's passed and what have you. And it's suppression firefighters. I can wear an air pack if I have to. Do I want to at 61 years old? No. So normally I drive. So I don't count as a suppression firefighter if I'm in the driver's seat. So we still have to have an officer and 2 guys in the back to count as a suppression firefighter. So, and as Dave said, with the training demands, I mean, it's what you have to do. We're pushing fire 1, we're pushing fire 2. Next year in Avondale, we're going to have a fire 1 and fire 2 class for national certification. We're going to host it at Avondale. So like I say, we can try to get some stuff happening closer so they don't have to go to the academy, don't have to go here. They still have to go to the academy to do the testing, but they can do a lot of the classroom portion right in Avondale. So it might save a little bit of time, a little travel for the guys and girls to do that. We have asked for an increase for pretty much all of our municipalities, as Eric said, because like I say, the price of career is going up. We have
Oxford and West Grove on this side. We have Kennett Longwood on this side. We're kind of in the middle. They make a move. This guy makes a move. We're in the middle, so we got to make a move. And we're all, basically, like Eric said, we're all fighting for the same fish in the same pond. You know, we really are. We have guys that work at Avondale to go to West Grove. We have guys that work at West Grove come to Avondale. They got guys that go all the way to Oxford. So they're playing the route one corridor, which is great because they're well trained. So, like I say, with that said, you know, our increases are mainly going to be staffing. As Eric said, price of fire apparatuses went up. The last ambulance we did a refurb, which ended up costing $200,000 versus a new one at $350,000. Like Eric said, you know, but right now to get a new ambulance, you're looking at $350,000 or above. So the last one we did, we decided to refurb it to save a little time, save a little money. I was fortunate enough when we delivered the new ambulance, I signed a contract for that. So it held a price for me. And it took almost, 2 years to get it, Steve? So they held that price for 2 years. So I think it was a win-win on our end to just say, we'll bite the bull and do it. Other increases we've seen, our insurance went up a little bit for auto insurance, our fuel. As Eric said, there's no local hospital, so we're running the wheels off the ambulances going to Christiana. From where we're at, we do go to Christiana quite a bit, unless people want to go to Penn over in Westchester, and we go to Penn. But just so like I say, we're running the wheels off the ambulance as far as fuel, maintenance, all that comes with a price. You know, I work for a municipality. I know, as Eric said, you guys are feeling the same pitch everybody else, you know, load a stone and plow, a new truck. I mean, everybody's feeling it. So as Eric did note a little bit, we have been in negotiations, not negotiations, been in discussions. We have what they call a steering committee formed. And it's 7 people from West Grove, 7 people from Avondale. And we're talking about how we can join forces to better serve the communities we serve and make it a future for the younger generation coming up that, hey, you know, the departments aren't going nowhere. They're going to be here. Hopefully we can get them trained and they continue up the path they're going. But that said, it comes with a cost. We actually hired a guy to do a study for us in West Grove, a joint study. It could take up to 2 years to do this joint study. The guy we chose was a guy by the name of Rob Brady. He comes highly recommended. As Eric said, we just had a meeting in Avondale. There was like 90 people in attendance between the 2 departments. He put on a presentation. Very good questions, very good comments. Correct me if I'm wrong, there was no negativity whatsoever in the room, no negative comments. There's still a lot to be done. It's not going to happen overnight. It comes with a price tag of $44,000, $22,000 per company. I reached out to Senator John King, talked to him, and he donated the money. So to do this study is not costing either department nothing other than their time. So we're going to move forward with that study to see what it comes up with. You know, we're looking at like Eric said, we're looking at a consolidation, merger. We don't know for sure exactly, but that's the way we're leaning. So that, as Eric said, it kind of, yeah, is the price going to go down? No, but it's going to make it a little easier across the board for everybody, we're hoping. And they're still going to come with increases, but we'll be able to share this administrative assistant. You know, we'll be able to hopefully share some career staff and some career supervisors and what have you. So I think it'll be more of a broader picture than just Avondale standing here and West Grove standing here separate. We'll be here jointly, you know. I do have a letter here from Rob Brady that I'll give to Stacy. I would read it, but probably mess it up. If you want to read it, you're more than welcome. Basically, it says what he's going to do is what we're planning on doing. What we're planning on doing too is when it's all said and done, it gets voted on. It'll be a turnkey operation where this individual will look at we have to appoint some other committees to look at operational issues, to look at bylaws, to look at finances, to look at everything. You know, we're not taking this lightly. We're gonna do A to Z. So that when we're done and it gets voted on and passed by both companies, that it's a turnkey operation. And we're ready to go in the service as one identity or one group. That's our goal. So I also have with me tonight that comes from Rob is a resolution that there again, we're asking this has nothing to do with any money. We're asking the township to adopt this resolution saying that you support the Avondale and West Grove Fire Company moving forward with this study. That's all it says. We're not asking any money. It's just for support. Rob feels it's very important that we have the support from all the municipalities involved, that they agree that we're going to move forward and see where this may land. Right now, for the last quarter of the year in Franklin Township, we've ran 30 ambulance calls total for the year. That's for the first 3 quarters. As I said before, we're still going Christiana and Westchester. Fire-wise, we ran 3 calls in London Grove Town or London Britton Township, or Franklin Township. I gotta go to the other ones tomorrow, but some of the things that from July to September 2024, we have 9,096 hours worth of 380 hours of training, 452 hours of meetings, 4,016 hours of duty crews, 1,440 hours of miscellaneous activity, 2,808 for calls. Miscellaneous activities is the guys doing work around the firehouse. You know, that's what we consider miscellaneous activities, or to go like to New Garden Park for standby at a function and stuff like that. I think you requested this. Did you get that? I brought another copy.
Thank you.
So I guess. So, did everything we need to hit about the. Yeah, I mean, good. Right.
Just, I think the take home point for
So we're going to join like this.
the reason for talks, you know, is certainly a financial end, but there's a core mission that, you know, for the West Grove and Avondale Fire Companies is to make sure that you get a qualified fire crew or a qualified ambulance crew to your residents when they call 911. Exactly. That is the mission of what we're doing. It will cost money. You know, so there's a business end of this, I understand, and there's a taxpayer, you know, question at the end that they want to know what's going on with it. But make no mistake about it, this is for sustainability. You know, we don't know what's going to happen with the volunteers in 2028 and 2026. So the decisions that we make now as department leaders and the financial funding that you give us, John always told me, we're a year and a half out. Give us a year and a half heads up. So we're literally planning 2 years in advance here to try to create a sustainable formula so that when your residents call and say, my smoke detector is beeping, or I fell and broke my hip, that we're able to mitigate that emergency. That's what this is about. So more so than, you know, hugging and kissing and sharing resources and all that stuff. The bottom line is that this is about getting, you know, the resources your citizens need when they call 911.
We want to provide the best service, like I said, like Eric said, you know, somebody calls 911, we want to provide the best service possible. And we feel joining together, we can continue down that road.
And we believe that we have 2 engaged organizations who are financially healthy at this point. The timing is right to have these discussions before things go south and, you know, we have difficulty getting vehicles and getting fire trucks on the street. We're both healthy. This is the time to do it. We don't want to wait 2 years and then throw our hands up and say, what happened? Where did everybody go? And we can't get fire trucks on the street and our ambulances are spread too thin. So now's the time to work on that.
I don't disagree, but I do have a question. You are asking for a 40% increase for fire for Avondale, and the EMS is asking for a 24% increase. So I can understand West Grove was around 10%. One can, I mean, you talked, it's inflation, it's more moving from that volunteer to career. But I mean, a 40% increase, that's just unsustainable for us. I mean, is there a reason why it's that high?
Like I say, Steve, this is our EMS captain.
This is
he's-
fire. The fire went up 40%.
That comes from a smaller number too. So the percentage,
But still,
I know, it's a large percentage, but it's from a smaller base
Mhm.
number.
But-
So it's a little bit skewed, right? That's,
but if we were part of a bigger budget, so I would, and really most of our service for Franklin Township comes from you guys. You're a small part of it. I know you guys are doing your best, but just it's 40% is a lot. And I hear what you're saying. We're going from 9,000 to 13,000. But it's still, just. a lot.
Like I said, the main thing we're looking at is the staffing increase, fuel cost, insurance, maintenance, because like I say, we're running the wheels off of things, even the fire trucks. I mean, we're running, as Eric said, we're gonna probably end up running close to 600 calls this year, fire-wise, total, versus last year we did what was that, 513, Steve, something like that, 520? Yeah. So
How many of those are for Franklin?
fire-wise,
Three.
yeah, I mean, this last quarter was only 3.
Yeah.
2024 first quarter, there was 43% of the calls in Franklin. You can see them. Like I said, we're in the same situation everybody else in. It's gone from volunteer to career. I mean, it's.
How do you evaluate each township that you service? So is everyone getting a 45% increase?
Still using the
formula that John.
This is our EMS captain. He does a lot of the
Third
budget
formula.
stuff.
So we've adopted that in 2021, I believe. And it was the easiest for us to start using. So using Franklin Township is for EMS covering 10% of Franklin Township. And then the fire funding is a third. The EMS funding is just on call volume. So in 2023, Franklin Township had 30 calls for EMS, and that's where we got our number based on what our budget number is, that percentage, so that 2.1%, and that's where your number comes in.
I apologize, my mic wasn't on. One of the questions I had, and I'm not trying to figure out how to formulate the question, but I'll just say what I've observed here. So in 2021, you got the SAFER grant, and that accounted for 2 FTEs, which is great. But that's only for 3 years. Those 2 FTEs, you've got to find funding for now, or let them go. So this is where this money is coming up. We're making back what you're losing from the
So that was in
SAFER.
2023. So we budgeted that for 2023 into the 2024 budget. So this is now,
okay.
we're
More
past
than that.
Yeah, so it was 21, 22, 23 was that SAFER grant.
So
This year was no SAFER grant funding.
End of SAFER grant period. Okay.
Yeah, so in
that's
2023, we were budgeting to replace that SAFER grant funding, and we did
for
talk.
2024.
Yep.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're a year in between that.
And we also,
We used the grant writer, probably John Sly, the same grant writer West Grove's using. And he said it's so competitive for us to go for a back-to-back SAFER grant that it was not even.
Yeah. So I guess the thought is you get the SAFER grant, and then in those 3 years you figure out where you're going to get the money to keep them.
And we were not fortunate in, it was a COVID grant. So
Yeah.
we did not have to keep that funding to keep those employees.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the SAFER grants you have to fund afterwards to keep them for the life of the grant after. So if you have a 3-year grant, you have to keep it for 3 years. We didn't have to do that. We were fortunate. We were able to do that with the increases from our 5 municipalities.
And so those FTEs are taken care of. That's already incorporated. The increase you're seeing now, you want to add more FTEs, more people.
We're not adding full timers yet. We're just adding more hours. So
Okay.
we're looking to add more hours overnight to hope either a second ambulance or complete a fire crew for 1 fire engine overnight.
Okay.
It's not adjusting daytime yet. It's also payroll increases. We're such a small fish in a big sea, which is why the discussion between the 2
Sure,
agencies is happening. We're trying to keep competitive to keep employees with us.
Mhm.
In the last month, I've lost three full timers. So we're going to work on trying to replace them, which is.
Do they go to
huge
a
challenge.
bigger municipality
they
or?
moved on to bigger, better things.
Yeah. There's nothing better here than here.
One went to Carroll County, Maryland. One's going to be going to Howard, who
Okay.
actually affects both of us because the gentleman's full time at both agencies. So
Mm.
we have so many of these employees that are working at both agencies that this cooperative partnership, maybe it stops working with agencies, we can get them to a place where they can only work one.
This is probably too inside baseball, but you said this guy works full-time at both. How does he sleep?
We have two full-time employees that work full-time at both places. They work 24 hours at Avondale, 24 hours at West Grove, and 48 hours off, and then they back their.
Okay. Okay. So that's what a full-time is, a 24-hour shift, and that
Yeah.
I was like,
I think
that's
So it's
seven-
72, so you 24 hours on,
Okay.
3 days off.
7 of our 12 full-time employees work a second full-time job.
okay.
So that's where we're trying to get our payroll up to be competitive with other agencies, maybe give these guys a break.
Okay.
And the thing that, what Eric said too, with their call volume in West Grove, EMS wise,
We're a third of
they're
that.
running
Yeah.
double, if not more than what we're running. As he said,
Yeah.
the return on billing is over $1 million. Ours is gonna be right around 500,000, maybe a little greater.
Which
So there again, we're.
there is a slide in there that you'll see. May of last year, we switched billing
switched
companies
to-
to use the same billing company as West Grove, and that's
Mhm.
netting about 100,000 to 150,000 more than our previous billing company. So we're making these small changes
Yeah, that's great.
that have been pretty drastic for the agency, where our budget is.
Would you change if you did join together? Would the shifts change too? Instead of 24 to 72?
That'd be something to be worked out
Yeah,
with.
they would probably change though, right?
It's-
Maybe,
Gary, we'll introduce you.
I'm Gary Bennicum. I'm the
Okay.
Assistant Chief of EMS and Career Staff Services for West Grove Fire Company. 2472 is pretty much the industry standard.
Okay.
One of the things we compete with on top of salaries is the schedule, is the benefits. Fortunately, we're able to cover our employees' benefits 100% for the employee. Anything for their family, spouse, dependents, they're responsible for 100%. So one of the things that we're looking for outside of that is ways to be competitive. We offer them 16 hours of paid training every year. We have a 401k that we match 3%. So when the chief talks about losing people to Howard County and to the city of Chester and bigger departments such as that, they're going to places with pensions. We lost a full-time firefighter last year who went to Aberdeen, Maryland to work for the federal government as a firefighter. I'm never, ever going to be able to compete with that. And one of the biggest things we talk about from an EMS perspective, that's my bread and butter. I give these guys a ton of credit for going into burning buildings. That's not me. So one of the things we talk about is the big shortage of people that want to be EMTs. 70% of the people that go into Good Fellowship's EMT program, which is the biggest EMT training program in Chester County, aren't going for a career in EMS. They're going to be nurses, they're going to be PAs, they're going to be doctors, or they're going to be firefighters or paramedics. So then we're down to that 30% that wants to go in for a career in EMS, and every agency in the county is trying to grab them. So when the chief talks about having 70 employees, that might be 12 hours a week. That might be 12 hours every 2 weeks I'm getting from those people, but we're getting them. And there's a reason that they're staying with us, and it's our culture. It's the benefits that we offer them, both financially and the luxuries and the accommodations that we offer at the station. We recently did some renovations in our station in the borough to give them nicer quarters. And we're constantly doing things just to try and make their environment nicer for the 24-hour shift that they're with us. So from a volume perspective, we're up 13% from last year. So you're going to see us do about 3,600 calls in 2024. Kind of weird. We project 5 to 7 every year based on the last couple of years that we've seen. COVID threw a wrench into that. The hospital closing certainly threw a wrench into that. But as the chief said, we're optimistic that we're going to see good results when the hospital does reopen. Part of the reason we can't really plan on that is we don't really know what kind of lines of service they're going to offer. We have met with them preliminarily. They don't have a clinical leadership team yet. So once they do establish one of them, we should be able to get a better handle on the scope of what they can handle. Because as of now, even when Jennersville was open, if somebody had a heart attack, we still couldn't take them to Jennersville. We had to take them somewhere that could do something here and now, such as a Chester County or Christiana, a trauma, a maternity, a stroke. So all the different specialty lines. And once we see what this hospital is capable of, then we'll be able to start basing some of our operational decisions on that.
Is there a timeline for when that's going to open?
The last update we heard was July of 2025. That's been bumped up several times.
Yeah, okay.
2026 for a viable like time to accept patients. And I think we'll have some data midway through 2026 to be able to come back and talk about maybe how it's going to affect the 2027 budget year. But we're looking at 2 years away of budget cycles before we'll have any good data to
Yeah.
report whether it's going to help our bottom line or not.
One of the challenging things that we see is currently 52% of our patients are going to Chester County Hospital. So did they go there because they reestablished their care there when Tower Health was no longer in our region? Or do they go there because that's the only hospital they know? And that's one of the factors the chief talks about with compiling data. We don't know, maybe 52% of those people are going to continue to say, my doctor's at Chester County, that's the ER I need to go to. So one of the things that we will establish as we move that forward.
Huh. Okay.
A lot of factors, makes your head spin, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, I just think if I'm having a heart attack, take me to the closest ER, I don't think I'd have a preference, but
Unfortunately, when that ER opens, the ability to do a heart catheterization isn't going to be there. So that's clearly
I
not
see.
a facility that we, a stroke where they can do something endovascular to try to avoid permanent damage. Those are things that require you to go to a different facility. But, like our hope is 50%. If we transport about 170 patients a month, between with our ambulances, and if they can take half of those patients, if they can take 80 or 90, that's gonna alleviate. We're guesstimating 180 hours of in-service ambulance time in this district, as opposed to all the way up to Chester County and back. We have 2 ambulances now that are approaching 200,000 miles. We have a full-time mechanic who is literally performing oil changes on our ambulances every month to try to keep these things running. I think it's safe to say.
Sure. So, I mean, these guys the chief talked earlier about how quick they hustle and the turnarounds.
great.
We staff 3 ambulances during the day. We have the capacity to put additional up with fire staffing if we need to. But 3 is our general staffing. To date, we've done 1,028 second calls. So there's an emergency going on. The second ambulance comes in, and we've done 256 third calls. So both of our ambulances are on calls. Somebody else in the district calls. We've done that 256 times this year. We have a 95% response rate. We do get mutual aid from Avondale Fire Company. We do get mutual aid from Union Fire Company, and occasionally Longwood are the 3. But it's mutual aid. We all help each other out. If they're on a call, we help them. We're on a call, they help us.
But EMS is in a major crisis. Touch on like at times Modena ambulance and.
Sure. I mean, so there's certainly times, and it happens probably more often than we'd like to admit, regionally, that we run out of ambulances. So during the day, Oxford typically has 2 on, Avondale typically has 2 on, and we typically have 3 on. On a busy day in the emergency department where our crews are waiting an hour and a half to 2 hours with a patient on the stretcher, it doesn't necessarily matter how much volume we have, because if we go out on 3 calls and all 3 of them get stuck in that vortex of the 2-hour wait, it leaves the area without coverage. And that certainly does happen. That's Westwood coming from Coatesville.
Yeah, and that's like what he's talking about. Our patient is on our stretcher, standing in the hallway in the ER, and there's nowhere to offload that patient onto an ER stretcher. They'll sit for upwards to 2 hours in the ER waiting to offload their patient. I mean, that's a huge.
And there is nothing we can do about that. There's nothing. The ERs do a great job, but they physically don't have any beds. And the nurses are super apologetic. And they're like, we're really sorry. 6 ambulances just came in at the same time, and we don't have any beds. We're trying to move some people around. We're trying to get people shipped out. So it's crazy because you see this stuff at a state level and a national level, but it happens here a few times a week. Yesterday, our crews went into Chester County. There were 5 ERs or 5 ambulances stacked up with patients on stretchers waiting for beds.
So you do know, when you get the call, if Christiana has 6 people waiting, do you take somebody to Chester, or or is it choice of the patient? Or
That's a good question. We do try and prioritize the patient's choice. But if you want to go somewhere that doesn't offer the line of service that we think you need, we'll discourage you from that.
Okay.
So a good example was Jennersville. We would have somebody, and we could see with the assistance of the paramedic that they were having an EKG dysrhythmia that suggested they may need a cardiac cath. And they would say, well, my doctor's at Jennersville. And we're like, well, Jennersville can't do this. Here's the hospitals that can. But what we see more and more is people want to go where their doctor is. And I think that'll be helpful when Christiana Care West Grove opens, because of the amount of people that are established with that system. Or you have the people, we have a lot of visitors to this area. So they're driving down Route 1, they're coming down 896, they're from Delaware, they get in a car crash. They kind of want to go to where they live. So I live in Westchester, I live in Newark, I want to go to this hospital. But globally speaking, we do try and make accommodations that are reasonable.
Right. If Longwood's full, their ambulance is full and you get the call, do you back bill Longwood for that, or it just comes into this?
It's we monitor our mutual aid every month, kind of to see where we're at, but it's a little bit complex. So there's times that amongst ourselves, I'll call Steve and I'll say, hey, we're out of ambulances. You have one left. Can you guys go sit at Jennersville?
Yeah.
So we'll try and move around regionally to support each other. But there's also times where Longwood gets dispatched as a paramedic, but they're going to respond in an ambulance, and we get dispatched as the ambulance. And we're the only 2 ambulances left in Southern Chester County.
Yeah.
We're not going to take the paramedic from Longwood's ambulance and put them on ours. If it's a patient that can go BLS, we don't really care about the money and how we're going to split this out. We tell them we'll take
It
it.
goes back to all about the care.
100%.
Service delivery to the area. That's the primary concern at that point.
Yeah, gotcha.
Sorry I think we just hijacked your meeting and I apologize.
This is
One more
always a good
question now.
conversation.
Sure.
It has to do with like, what do you do for recruiting? Like, so I would think that everybody that wants to work at your place wants to be paid. They don't want to volunteer. They want to get paid, right? So how do you get volunteers?
That's an interesting statement. So it's not incredibly accurate.
Okay.
So we have a bunch of firefighters, one from Baltimore City, one from Christiana, one from Wilmington, one from the city of Chester. They are firefighters there, and on their days off, they come to the firehouse, and that's their contribution.
Okay.
Which is great.
They're volunteers.
Yeah, but that's diminishing. That's what you're telling me.
That is
Yeah.
diminishing. So to attract volunteers at this point is we do social media stuff. And then we created a pamphlet, if any of you, the Franklin Township Day last year, we have a trifold pamphlet, which we put out. We had them at 896 Pine and some of the area establishments up in Jennersville, where it's just an informational sheet. And then clearly electronic is the way to go. So we try to get them on our website, fill out the forms and see if we can get them in that way. Fortunately, West Grove is still getting volunteers to come and join our ranks. But we get a lot that come in and kick the tires and check it out. And then they meet with our membership secretary and they're like, well, I don't have that much time, so for what the percentage is from when they come in and they fill something out online to where we get a fully trained member a year later who's able to answer a fire call, it's pretty low.
Yeah. Seems like it would be pretty tough to get high school, like seniors in high school.
Yeah, so there's a really good program, the Octorara Homeland Security Program. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it. These kids start in 10th grade, 11th grade, and 12th grade. It spans across Chester County. They come out as certified firefighters. They come out as certified EMTs when they graduate high school.
Go tech for EMS and fire.
And we've been
Okay.
super fortunate to recruit some of them.
Yeah.
We've had a real good relationship with them. We go out and help them train. We've been to their graduation, things like that. And a lot of them join as volunteers. So we see them all through their high school years, grade 10, grade 11, grade 12. And we had one last year, went to Wilmington Fire Department, basically right out of high school.
And
Good.
Avon Grove High School is a partner organization, so they get them signed up and then they arrange transport. They go to Avon Grove High School for the morning and then they go up there for road tech in the afternoon to the county fire academy. And that's where they get their training.
And all of us are annoyed they didn't have that when we went. to high school.
Yeah.
The other thing we talk about, when we talk about like those firefighters that come in, the same 100 calls they gave us 5 years ago, if they're answering the same 100 calls now, just with the increase in volume, they're giving us the same level of commitment, but the volume's gone up so high, it's just not conducive with maintaining and being sustainable when we start to look at 2025 and 26 and 27.
So in 2019, on the Safer Grant application, in 2019, West Grove had 18 suppression level firefighters who ran 25% of the total fire calls in 2019. In 2023, that number was down to 9 suppression level firefighters running 25% or more of the fire calls. Now, I believe we still have most of those members still running the same amount of calls. The calls have just gone up. So if I run 100 calls and that used to be 400 calls, I was running 25%. But if I'm running 100 calls now, I'm only, covering, 18 or 16% at this point, so my percentage has gone down, even though my commitment has not. So that's a huge factor as well. Man, we really hide that.
No, we appreciate the detail. I do anyway. I know, like, Guy, I've heard him. I've not been here that long, but I've heard Guy, you guys know a lot of people and you get them to donate things too. So that helps. I mean, everything helps. We like hearing about it.
He really is. And over the years, I apologize for not knowing any of you. I had a good relationship with the previous boards and, not having enough FaceTime with you. I apologize ahead of time here, but, our communication is always open and, we're always willing to come down and speak to the board informally, formally, public. If you have to raise taxes, I always offer that we will shoulder that load with you and we will come and explain to your residents why that tax is necessary. Get into the nuts and bolts, talk to them about level of service and what that dollar means that they're going to spend. We did that in London, Britain some years back, and it was very favorable. And the taxpayers were thankful for it, and everybody in attendance was all in favor of moving forward. So we're here for you to partner as we move forward. So that won't end after this meeting. Don't hesitate to call me. Jeff's got my number. Melissa knows how to get a hold of me. Be happy to come back. And certainly John will shake me down.
The one thing, I'm sorry.
Question for Gary.
Yes, sir.
Years ago, there was an insurance compensation problem where the patients were getting compensated directly from their insurance company and they were just cashing a check and not sending it to you.
Still goes on to this day.
That's still.
We get about 50%. So the Blues, if we don't contract with them, your Blue Cross, your Blue Shield, they send the payment to the patient directly. So contracting with them means it's below Medicare rates. So if we do contract with them, we'll get paid 100% of the time, but at Medicare rates, if we don't contract with them and 50% of the patients turn the check in, we make more money than if we were contracted.
And what percent, I'm assuming you go after these patients.
We do. We go after them through our billing company and then essentially a collection agency.
And what percentage of recovery do you get from the folks that aren't paying?
We're about 65%.
Okay, so you get majority of.
We're still doing better than if we contract.
No, I hear you. I just want to, it's 50% pay and then 60% of the people who don't.
Yeah, we're about 65% that we do recover.
Okay, it's not bad.
One of the things
Better
that
than I thought it would be.
surprisingly, I think once like people kind of play hardball and they think like, oh, volunteer fire company, and then they get the note from the collection agency and they're like, man, I don't really want this on my credit report. I better pay it.
Yeah.
Save their life. I mean, just wasn't.
Right.
It is kind of silly. It's hard to believe that somebody would do that, but it's actually pretty rampant.
Happens every day, like Gary said, people get the checks sent to them, they're like, man.
Well, I do want to thank you guys for coming out and it's we ask a lot of questions and it's important to take this time because it's one of the biggest line items we got is fire and EMS. So
the one thing
appreciate the time.
We always say when we talk about that is we have a great story to tell and we're super clean, we're super transparent. It's never like you have to walk in and you're like, man, I hope they don't ask about this. Like we have an open book, we have a good story, we're doing a really good job with what we have to work with, and we want to continue to do a really good job. And you guys supporting that makes that happen.
So plus, we really need Joe.
Thank you.
And we need you.
Absolutely. It's a very reciprocal relationship.
So I have a resolution in front of me here. Is this something for us to consider, or do you want us to read this and sign this now? What's
later?
I don't know what
talk about it later and get a hold of me and I'll come back and pick it up.
Well, if we're gonna do it, we'll have to read it in a public meeting.
Basically, all that is, Dave, is just saying that you support the study that we're going to. Rob feels it's very important in all the municipalities that we serve jointly and as well as separated.
Yeah, so it looks like this is the way it's written. It says we would support creating a more sustainable and effective fire rescue and emergency medical service system. So it sounds like the way it's written is if the study was to show that you guys would merge, that we would support it. Not we're supporting a study. It's that if you guys decide to merge, we would support the merger.
It's kind of I think for Franklin and London, Britain, where you pay both agencies, you already do.
Again,
But it's hard to say. You need to see what the study says before you can set.
It's just supporting the.
Also, like I said, there's not there.
Be clear.
so
Yeah, there's a there's a difference.
I think if we want to reword it. we
yeah,
can
let's
get back-
work on it. Yeah, absolutely. We'll work on this.
Park Township, I looked it over that meeting and presented it to them. I gave it to them in advance and they had their lawyer look at it and they did adjust a few things and they signed.
Yeah. So what we'll do is we're going to do the same exact thing,
Exactly.
and we'll talk about it at the Board of Supervisors meeting.
Yeah, we don't think it's free.
Yeah, we don't.
No, I'm not. Yeah, that's right. That's why I asked the questions. So cool.
Right here tonight that, oh, I didn't want you guys to say, well, we didn't know about this.
No, I appreciate it.
All right.
I'm gonna step out.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. All right. All right. Thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate it. Just you to show up if the house gets on fire. That's about it. All right. Thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate the time. Really do.
Appreciate it.
The good question is what Donna brought up, is that 40% across the board everywhere? It's a small number for us, but it's 40% to everybody. Yeah.
If they're gonna merge, things could become irrelevant.
That's true. It'll blend together.
London Grove Township became extremely dissatisfied with Avondale and switched their whole service to West Grove, which was an enormous hit on Avondale. So I don't know whether that has anything to do with it. I don't want to bring that up when you're here.
Right.
That could be a factor.
And trying to merge again, or
Well, they lost an enormous
yeah.
amount of coverage,
Well,
and they've got fixed costs to cover.
Yeah.
So now the fixed costs get covered, spread over, fewer residents. So, I don't want to
But
take
the-
the whole meeting here.
But the key message is, and I've heard it loud and clear, these increases are not going to stop. So
That's
they have to go from a volunteers group to career, because it's the only way they're going to survive. And as we said, we need these people. This is not a nice to have. This is core function. So I think it is a matter of understanding as we look at our budget in the future, just as we have that MS4 commitment, we're going to have a commitment here that makes sure there's additional money coming on.
Well, and I think the other piece too is to kind of change the way this has been going for the last few years, because we're starting to see a difference in, like you said, how much they're asking for year over year. So the next step might be for us to say, this is how much we can swallow each year. Like, we can't do 10%. We have to understand how much we're willing to pay, rather than have come in and just say, okay, well, whatever your increase is, we'll pay it.
Or we raise taxes. And that, I mean, I want to go there.
Well,
but
we want to make sure
have
we
to.
push back, right, first, before we even talk about that.
Yeah, and I'm not too versed on negotiating with the fire departments, but what is our likelihood of negotiating a price down? Seriously, I don't know.
Well, it's, I mean, at some point, they're going to have to they may get to a point where they outstrip our ability to pay, and we're gonna have to tell them that, right? And it's not like you can, if it, God forbid, it gets to a point where you have to raise taxes to pay for this. You can't just raise taxes on a dime and say all of a sudden this revenue comes in. You have to say, okay, well, we can't add another $50,000 in EMS, right? So, pushing back and saying, look, are we really doing everything we can to control costs in your EMS? And obviously I'm not saying they're not doing that.
Right.
I think they're very transparent.
Yeah.
But it's a question that we have to ask, right? It's just do it, it's like anything. It's do your due diligence. Do you really need to pay,
I was surprised their personal funding or request comes in so much too. They get a lot from.
That's impressive. 15% response is high.
That's a lot. Yeah, 200 grand. And then I wonder if there's any other grants besides the SAFER grant that they could get. Maybe we challenge them for that.
That's another interesting thing. Is the SAFER grant. I don't know if they're all 3 years. I just infer that from the information, but it's 3 year. You get 2 FTEs with that grant, 3 years, and then that grant stops, and now you got 2 people who are like, I need to get paid. How are we going to do this?
That's when you see 44.
And then all of a sudden, that's what we're seeing, right? It's sort of like you don't get that in perpetuity. It's you got 2 people, now you got to find out where that money comes from.
Start working with this on the formula. This is back in 2015. West Grove Fire Company realized that they needed a real budget, an auditable budget, because Avondale didn't have one, and I wouldn't increase their payment until they come up with a decent budget. Well, West Grove realized during that whole wonder that they had to come up with a real budget. So they took all the papers they had in boxes and took them to some accountant in Kennett, and they straightened the whole thing out and come up with a real budget. They went out and engaged a professional company to develop a plan for their capital plan. So they didn't do it themselves. They didn't say, we need this truck, we need that truck. They got some professional plan. So they got really squared away. But
That was in 21, John?
Pardon?
21, you said?
No, before then, 15. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But the point I was going to make it.
All right. So our budget discussion continues. We got through our fire department, and now this is the first month of our first meeting of the first month to talk about our budget and go through the budget. I don't know how we want to talk about this. If we want to start, I think oftentimes we'll just have Melissa talk about the high points and notes and what the big changes are. And then if we want to go through line by line, I'm open to suggestions on how we want to handle it.
Now, I just want to repeat what we said before, and I sent you an email saying it, just to understand the way this budget was crafted. It's not about listing all our expenditures. It was about understanding our income, and Melissa had that. So the income is conservative, but it's what we believe was coming in. And then it was going through and listing all the expenditures that, from a yearly perspective, that we know is coming up in 2025. So those are real. And some are our estimates. And I think we went, I know for some of the PRO stuff, a little bit on the high side because you just didn't know where the mowing is. But it does not cover all of MS4. We looked at what we knew for the income, what we knew from the expenses minus MS4. MS4 wasn't in the conclusion. And then we came up with $375,000 that were not accounted for. We took 200,000 of that and put it in MS4, not because it's enough, but it was something. Put that into the reserve fund.
Okay.
And then that left it with 175,000 thereabouts. And and the reason we left that there is because there's money that's needed in January before the tax money comes in that could be paid, that we might need for snow. We may not.
So
But-
that's not here. I'm looking at, maybe maybe this is an older, looking at my version.
Okay, it should be.
I have 309, 918 and that
Will not
cash
have the
balance.
same. Okay, I do need the other one.
And then, so I wonder if this file,
Should have been.
so we all have the 309.
Yeah, I have an old one, so I.
That's okay.
Yeah, I'll take-
So I guess my question is, maybe it's for Melissa, because
It should have been clear. It was 375,000 in the general fund. In the general fund, I was not clear.
okay,
And so what we did with then was we took 200,000 out of the general fund.
that's with the 186.
Right, right, yeah,
Okay.
and put that into the reserve fund, and then that should leave us with something that comes over about the 186, right? You see that every.
So the reserve fund is basically the MS4 fund right now. Is that what
Right.
we're saying?
Right,
Okay. And
So that's at 430, 453 now?
but it should also be a reserve fund too, and if you look at,
it's with
if you look at the reserve fund, you'll see there's different categories in it.
so the reserve fund was our rainy day fund.
Correct.
And now we're dumping it all into MS4?
No.
We're just holding it back.
We have it set up to beginning, it should be MS4s in here, let me just look at this here.
It's the blue line down it.
Right, so you have 200,000, so you see how in the income. Yeah, she told, Melissa was able to call out MS4 to be the 200,000. So it's and then there's 232 that's sitting is that if we need it, because MS4 isn't the only thing out there, right? Something else could happen. So you have the two of them are in there.
So, okay. So my head's spinning a little bit.
Okay,
So we've got the reserve fund this was the rainy day fund. We had been
Correct.
funding this. We wanted to get to a target of 350, and I think then we upped it or something to a little bit more in case something.
Some percentage of the budget.
Yeah, it's like some emergency fund. Yeah, right. So that was our emergency. Now we're pulling MS4 from that to pay for MS4.
We're putting money in it for
They
MS.
must put money in it, general fund.
So that's what the 103 is.
And it's just
Ah,
Reserve.
I see. So I got you. So the 103 is MS4.
And it's big for us to track it, be able to see.
Okay, perfect. I get it. All right, I understand now. So it's the blue is just another line
Yeah.
item to say this is earmarked for.
Yeah.
Okay, and it's 200,000. And then that leaves. Okay, so I think we're on different. I think I have a different front page because 103,500.
Just to be clear, the way these budgets work, if you just go back to the page that has reserve fund, you'll see at the top, it has an income of $453,000, right? You have to, in the budget, at least this is the way Joan explained it to me, you have to say something's going to be spent. If you don't say something's going to be spent, even though we don't have any projects, there's $350,000 being down there spent. I think and that's where you get the 103. The actual message to you is that the reserve fund at the end of next year will have $453,500 in it. We'll probably spend something because we are working on grants for MS4. But we went high.
Yeah.
And we probably, I hope we don't spend 350,000. But if we
Okay.
do, we're able to do that because we allow that.
So at the
that
end
much.
of the year, we have $453,000 in the reserve fund. 200 of that is reserved for MS4.
Correct,
Taken from the general fund.
correct.
Perfect. Okay,
Okay.
I understand. Okay.
But I can't, I keep on saying it's not enough.
No, I know. So the estimate, I mean, we've got, so we put in 200,000, which is about 50% of what we need.
Exactly, that's totally right, because I'm thinking $2 million.
Yeah, we'll need
Over
about
5 years.
$450,000 a year. So right now we are underfunding our MS4 requirement by $200,000.
It's the best we can do. Right. I mean,
No, I
that's for
understand.
the board to decide, but yeah, it's for the board. I don't know where else to get the money from.
But that's not including any of the remediation we can do.
You mean like grants and stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah, so if we get $200,000 worth of grants, then for
Yeah.
2025, we're covered. We'll just need to do that every year
what we got is not including any work we could do or get grant.
Right, but
Okay.
the thing you do have to remember, it's the way this works. You have to pay the
Right.
play, right? So if you want a grant, and I don't know how much money it is, you have to take a chance, right? You have to, and Jeff started to do this work already with Pannoni. Go out and see what's available, what projects are reasonable to
Right.
talk to a grant. That's gonna be time for Pannoni, you're gonna have to pay for, we're gonna pay time for Pannoni to put the grant together. And then you cross your fingers and hope. But it's,
It's a
what
crapshoot.
can you do, right? Right.
It's a
Mhm.
crap.
Because if you win, you win big.
Right.
Sure.
It's a crapshoot.
So at the end of the year, it looks like we'll have a cash balance of 309, 300, let's just say 300,000.
I actually think it would be more than that. Well, it all depends what we spend, right? Because but remember, once again,
That includes the.
that assumes we're spending $350,000 for MS4. We're not. Well, I don't know. We will probably have more than this.
No, so my point is when we say, hey, is there more money that we can pull? But we want to have some money here just
Yeah.
because for incidentals.
Plus, the other thing too, you have to remember, and I learned this from John and Melissa, January 1st, we owe money on the open space fund. So Melissa needs money in the account
To move over.
so that she can move over in January. There really is no extra money. There is no extra money.
Oh, I understand.
But this has to be available to pay the open space fund that's due in January.
Right.
Because there's no tax money.
And
there's
that, the open space fund is, let's see, where is that? We spend how much every year on open space?
Well, it goes up every year.
I'm looking for that line item.
It's in the open space fund.
Uh,
So we spend about 113,000 for the acquisition and 67,000 for the interest.
all right,
And
so,
we have to move over 93,000.
so we spend about $180,000 a year on open space.
Right, plus a little, well, if you look at the budget,
And
a little bit more.
Yeah, and then the 93,000 has to come over from the general fund. To cover the cost.
Right, because the
I don't know, tax
the
rate.
fee doesn't cover it. Right, okay. Okay,
Well, the acquisition, I guess, is
That's
the
Hawkins, yeah.
parking issue, right?
What do you want to say? Yeah. Do you see?
Yeah, but that gets taken care of in 1 year.
yeah, that's done in one
That's
year.
done in 1
So
year.
that's.
Because the other
that's
two
the good
numbers
news.
I recognize,
That
they're-
goes away.
that depends on.
Yeah, so that's not an ongoing, that's a one shot. We're done.
Yeah, so that's really the good news, if you call it that. We'll probably need it for EMS in the following year, but if you look at your open space fund budget, you'll see 67,000 on line 461.00. That's just next year we spend it, we pay it, we're done. So that's the good news here. Do you see?
Yeah,
That we don't have to do that every year.
no, I know.
So that's
Yeah.
good. And that gives us a little bit of money.
It's,
It may be for EMS, and maybe money we can put towards MS4. I don't know, but I take a little comfort in the fact that that's not something you have to.
it's a
spend
one and
every-
done.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So is acquisition the correct term?
Well, she's trying to be.
Well, I had a different phrase in there, but I was told to.
Because we're not buying anything. I mean, we're not acquiring property.
We did
Yeah, do you see?
Wickerton Road.
That's a open space. That's the easement.
Yeah, right. Okay, you can say easement.
Yeah, I know. I know what we're talking about.
Yeah, she's there.
This is an easement.
It's not, yeah.
It's not an acquisition.
We're not buying property.
not like
It's
a-
not an acquisition. We're not,
Change that, just say, yeah.
Right, the reason you pay the person for the open space is because you've devalued their land.
yeah, well, you paid for their development rights. You didn't devalue their land. You bought the development rights off of it.
Well, if you look at, before you preserve it, the entire zoning, AR zoning options are available for that landowner.
Yeah, I understand. We understand.
Depends how you look at it, I guess.
It depends on how you look at it, but we didn't buy land. It's not an open space
I
acquisition.
think you're right. We should change that word.
It's not an open
Yeah.
space acquisition.
This goes out to the public. It shouldn't be an acquisition.
Yeah, because we didn't buy the land.
But, yeah, so.
We didn't buy any
What-
open,
Purchased an easement.
Are you okay with the word easement?
Yeah, no, I'm fine.
open space easement is the right.
That's a good catch, Steve.
All right. Yeah, so that's what that is. What else is there?
Maybe we should talk a little bit about, the park and rec. Just if you guys remember, we did talk about, Jeff presented some projects, some maintenance projects. In the park and rec, and that, if you look at line, I got this right, so 454,371. No, that's not it. Might be 372. It's 372. So
Park
it's
maintenance.
yeah. So we still need to agree. I mean, that's just put in there, assuming we agree to those maintenance projects. But that is an area of conversation that we can have.
Yeah, I mean, I think really the only, you presented the maintenance items. I guess the only thing we might want to talk about is priority setting, right? Does all this need to be done this year? And because that's what else is there to talk about, right? So it's the $70,000 we want to just line out what needs to get. Are all these a 2025 problem, or some of these a 2026 problem? I think you already went through it that way and prioritized it. I'm not challenging you, Jeff, and you don't have to answer it right now. But I think if we want to talk about it again at the next, if we want to go through this next board meeting or the next workshop meeting.
Yeah, I don't know if you have the Choctaw's timing.
But yeah, I guess we need the timing.
Yeah, so Jeff
It's
did
just-
present it as a 2025 project. The board never agreed to it. It was just presented.
Oh, right.
Right, the big thing is that these are my thoughts. You know, these
Yeah.
major possible expenditures I can't go through with until I talk to the board about it.
Yeah.
And you say, yes.
Okay.
You know, some of these, you may say, no, I get it.
Yeah.
But, I'm just trying to look forward.
Yeah. I mean, I think when we spoke, we didn't have any major issues with
No,
what
I
was
agree.
presented. So
We like Jeff's recommendations.
yeah, I don't think there was any issue. And I'm just going to say this, and I probably shouldn't out loud, is I am surprised that the mowing has remained stable for as long as it has. That's great. I'm going to knock on wood on that but that's it truly is a lifesaver. But I mean, I guess
The contractors haven't changed either, right?
no, same group of people. So
Maybe we want to talk a little bit about the capital fund, just the road program, so everybody's aware of it. So I say it again, this is a tight budget. So what we did is we didn't take any money and put it into the road program except money that was already in the capital fund. So if you look at line 392.50.
yeah.
This money, the 270, was already in the capital fund, thank God, right? So we were carrying money over from 2024 to 2025, and that's a lifesaver for us. There are projects that we need to have done, that some of that the filtration, those projects have to be done. And I know Jeff and Ron will look at roads, but I just wanted folks to know it's nothing, there was no additional money. It was that money starts off, and then we took the money from I think that was it. No, right. So that's all the money here, and then the money from the what do you call it? Where you get the $200,000 from the state. So that money, that's
Liquid fuel, yeah.
right. So that's going to be some other money we have to use, which is good.
200,000.
And
Yeah.
then if there's anything left over from
So
or we put it somewhere else.
So that's good. So this is the road program. This is not the snow removal. It's
No,
the
it's
full
the-
road program. So, at the end of the day, we might end up with, $473,000 for the road program, which is good, right? That's pretty consistent with what we
We're
pay.
not because we have that much carry, we won't have that
But
carry
next year, we're gonna be liquid fuels only, probably.
No, so the capital fund is not including anything for the road program. That's for Thompson Estates and Southview Estates. From the filtration for stormwater.
Right, but then we'll get to, so I guess it's how you look at it. So
Right.
how do you define roads? So the money in the capital fund will be used for the drainage stuff, but I look at that as roads too, but it's not necessary.
Right, we always split it between the two, the stormwater remediation and the road program is always kind of done the same. Okay, so next year, this money's gone and we'll only have liquid fuels, which is gonna be the $200,000 a year.
and still not being able.
We all having
not
fun?
to sport
Just
enough
fun?
money. I think we can get through
It's
next
fun.
year. It's just, as you think about it, it's like, there comes a point where you're gonna, unless something happens with PSAT and somehow we get some relief with MS4.
No.
You know, what annoys me so much, if we didn't have MS4, we'd be sitting pretty.
Yeah.
That'd be
We
great.
would be really sitting pretty. We could deal with EMS, we could deal with what, and still even put some money in the bank.
Mhm.
It's just, it's such a big request, such a big mandate. It's just hard to get your head around. And you can look at our income is flat. I mean, it's,
We're not a business. We have a.
well, it's based on taxes and I think income has not gone up that much, so you're not gonna get, your EIT is gonna go up. So, it's definitely not keeping up in line with if increase in cost in EMS, but I'm telling you, if we didn't have MS4, we'd be sitting pretty, and it's just frustrating that.
Well, for the next year, you're gonna pick up $67,000 because you don't have that.
Yeah, but that's gonna go to EMS. That's,
Yeah, we'll have 60,000.
One-time thing.
John, that will go to EMS.
I know where it's gonna go, yeah, but I just.
Don't get you.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not the, it's not the end of the world. We're
No.
treading water right now. We just,
We're not-
we'll need to get more creative next year.
Yeah, once this MS4 spending starts kicking in.
Then it's a problem. Then it's a problem. So are we planning on any MS4 projects in 2025, or are we still exploring and we're just kind of shoring up?
We've done some exploring with Ron Reagan and Pannoni.
Yeah.
We did quite a bit of walking on Friday. So Pannoni will be in at the board meeting to talk about a possible grant to apply for.
Great.
Now, we've come up between Ron and myself and Pannoni, a draft of how we would like to proceed. Of course, we can't do that until we present it to the board. But I think we have a path forward that we'll talk about with the board at the next board meeting.
And Jeff, I think the board knows has to be done by the end of November. So if you have to call us in to do anything, you do what you have to do. I mean, I think the timing works because I think the board meeting in mid-November is probably a good timing. But if something happens that you need to get to us ahead of time, then you tell us and we'll make it
Yes.
happen.
No, 100%, yes.
Just one other, the thing that we will be spending money in MS4, not only for the grant writing, but there is an annual report that needs to be done. I don't know if you remember the work that the last guys did. There is something to do where they have to go look at filtration vents and they have to map stuff out. So I can't tell you how much. It's not going to be $500,000,
Yeah.
but there will be some money that Pannoni's going to have to spend or Ron's going to have to spend to put this annual report in that has to go in every year. So that it's not without cost, and that's not even a project, right? That's it's just the regulatory. You guys know a lot of it because your jobs are regulatory consequences, but it's the regulatory reporting. It's
Compliance.
Yes, compliance. Thank you. That's so.
All right. So
So, I mean, I'll just say that I think between John, Melissa, Donna, you guys did a great job.
I know.
Thank you, John, for helping.
That full understanding of the budget. Are there any surprises for you?
Melissa,
Moving some money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, if somebody proposes something to move this around, you'll know exactly what the impact is.
yeah,
I think that's
for sure. I mean, it's, yeah.
So just more comments. So one is, we have the best staff that's out here and, both Jeff and Melissa, know how tight the budget is. And, I hope you guys are right with this, but they're like, they wouldn't even put a raise in. I'm like, no, you cannot, you have to live. So I did suggest, it was my suggestion that because this was a draft budget that Melissa put an increase in for staff. It does not include bonuses, but that is something that the board can talk about and decide, do they want this or not? And was it like a 3%? What percent? Do you remember what percent you put it at, Melissa? I know it wasn't 3%. Right.
Melissa just whispered to me that she wanted the same percentage that Avondale Fire Company.
No.
Yeah, I just want to know that they have to look out, we have to take care of, and not that you guys would, but we have to take care of our staff. There is no bonus in this, and this is something that we as a board also need to talk about when the time's right. But we do have that extra, remember I said the general fund has that extra $150,000. I know we would never spend it blindly, a lot of it's for snow, but we could take some money out of that, and still keep everything balanced. If, we decide to give them a bonus for both of them. For all the whole three staff, but that, I don't know when we have that. Do we have that as executive session? I don't know when we do that, but that's a conversation we need to have.
Okay.
Melissa, did I forget anything? There's your cheat sheet. What do you got in the cheat sheet?
Think we covered
Donna, you said 150,000?
Yeah, see, if you look in the general fund, it was 186, I think is what you're saying.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify. I didn't see 150 even.
Yeah, so I think my mind is
I got-
150, but yeah, it's really the number 186.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, that's the last thing to cover, is if you go to the general fund.
Okay.
For, the roadside mowing, which is on the last page of the general fund.
What, do you have a number?
438,317.
That's at the top.
Top of the page.
Yeah. So the roadside mowing there is not just roadside mowing, it's roadside mowing, elevated cut, super elevated cut, and site distance.
Okay.
And that number you're seeing there is the worst case scenario, what we could pay top dollar for all those things per year.
Okay.
We had a budget last year of 69,900, and we're coming in at 60,500 for 2024. So just because that number is so high there doesn't necessarily mean that's what we're going to spend.
Okay.
Similar to what we do with our snow plowing and our salt.
Is roadside mowing also yard works? Or is that
Yes.
another? Okay.
And it's all bid, all that's. So I try to estimate it a little bit higher for worst case scenario, just to have the money in the budget.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So that was my only other note. I believe.
Well, and I don't know, maybe Donna remembers, I think we were on the board together. There might have been a safety change with roadside mowing where they needed to add, or maybe Jeff, they need to add an additional personnel for roadside mowing, and that's one of the things that drove the cost. In 2023, it was $40,000, and then budget in 2024 went to 69,000.
Correct, because now we are required to have a safety vehicle behind the road,
Yeah.
side mower, with
So-
a person in it with flashers and the right signage and.
So that's where if you look at the budget, we went from 40 in 23 to 69 in 24. It's a huge jump. Not to say that the safety wasn't a good idea, but if you look at the budget and understand where'd all that money go, that's where it's going.
I'll ask this of everyone, but do we have an expectation that this 896 project is, when it throws the traffic onto our smaller roads, is our maintenance going to go up?
Mm.
I mean, it starts next year.
More on the road, but probably not.
Not drastically. Okay.
I'm worried about what happens to Appleton Road.
Yeah, one thing I have been asking Bruce Massey about over the years, before these detours start, to have PennDOT actually, there's companies that do this, to take videos of the roads where the detours are going to be.
Yeah.
So we have a starting point and then we have an ending point. And then if there's a major problem, we have something to go by, to talk with them about.
Yeah, I think he agreed, right? He said that's what they do, right? So that's just good
Yes.
practice.
Yep.
This would be actual videos.
This would be an actual video on a vehicle while it's driving the road.
Yeah.
My thought is, John, to be 100% straight with you. I think it's a video and someone driving it and some marker. Yeah,
Yeah.
yes,
So-
yes.
I guess I think we had this conversation before. I know we're totally derailed the conversation, but since we brought up 896, there's going to be significant detours, 896, significant roadway. There's only a few ways you can go through Franklin Township, depending on where you're closing 896, and Appleton Road is one of them. Appleton Road is not designed to be a high volume road. And now we're going to see everybody using 896, or everybody who was using 896 use Appleton. Is there been a traffic study or any idea that PennDOT, because it's a PennDOT road, so we can't do much with it. Any idea what we can do or what they could do to do some traffic mitigation on Appleton Road to either slow traffic down or, something?
And I have to put Peacedale Road in there.
Peacedale Road is another one. That's another one. And the sightline on Peacedale is horrendous.
Well, part of that detour is going to be going by the elementary school and through Kimbalot, and another one's going to be Flint Hill Road.
Yeah, I agree.
So,
It's going to be a mess.
and
I mean,
and
we got
it-
that little bridge on Flint Hill, that little bridge at the bottom too,
and
that's London Britain. Is that London Britain or is that us?
that's London, Britain.
Okay, it's right before me.
Right by a squeak.
And an interesting thing, and I thank the board for this, it was put in last year's budget. We do have a new radar sign. This one is far more advanced, the things you can do with it and the data that you can take off
Have
of
a
it.
little police officer jump out.
Yes. So
Spike strip.
it may sound, it may, oops. It may sound like a little thing, but you can do a traffic count with this.
Yeah.
And then we can determine the 85th percentile speed.
And PennDOT's okay if we throw that on one of their roads.
Yes, the first time, I'm hoping we can put this out within a week. After working with the state police, they had asked if we could put it on 896 between Appleton and Good Hope. I did get an okay from PennDOT. They're waiving any permit fees for us. And it was suggested that we move it once or twice a month, which is no problem.
Yeah.
This thing is built to be able to move.
Yeah, I think it'd be interesting. So you can actually collect data with that thing. So that's
We-
great.
Yep, we can collect data, it'll go to the cloud, and the nice thing is too, we work in conjunction with the state police. I have the lieutenant signed up for the sign. So anytime he can sit at his desk
Check out what the sign's doing.
and see what the speeds are. And it's amazing the reports you
Yeah.
can make. I wish we had this 10 years ago, but it's great.
Yeah, I think a lot of those side roads, pedestrians use those roads for walking and riding their bikes because it's low volume. So we might just something to think about and keep our eyes open as the 896 project rolls forward.
Had this Hess Mill Road with the old wooden bridge, but that's been solved.
That's been solved. Yeah. Yeah, and it still looks good. All right, so do we have any other comments or questions on the budget before we move on?
Suck it up.
That's what it is. That's what it is. All right. So now I would like to open the floor to public comment. This section can include comments on anything attendees may want to share. Commenters must state their name and whether they are a township resident or a taxpayer of the township. Is there any public comment? All right, John Auerbach, can you give him a mic so we can?
It appears that the fire companies are gonna merge. So this whole issue of the 44% increase by Avondale, I would be zeroing in on it just the way you are. But that may become irrelevant once they get together. Now, the benefit will be that they could share fixed cost and overall, the fixed costs for both the combined fire companies will be lower and you will benefit from that efficiency.
Mhm.
Now, you gotta laugh at this one, but one of the big issues of merging a fire company is you bring the companies together and now you have two fire chiefs.
Hmm.
Who's gonna be the fire chief?
I think he's already said, I think he's the gentleman who works at the EMT, or he can't do it anymore. Remember?
Full-time.
Yeah, they'll have to hire.
Yeah,
They'll probably
Yeah.
hire full.
Okay,
Yeah.
but that was always a problem in the past, that you brought those companies together and you had two fire chiefs and you only needed one.
I worked at a company after the merger, they had two CEOs. That didn't last very long.
Same thing. One guy.
You guys got really a good handle on the budget.
Yeah. All right. All right. Appreciate that. Thank you, John. I feel it's very unfair whenever I ask if there's a public comment, I look right at you first. So, so I'm just teasing. So, all right. Any other public comment? All right. Not hearing any, I make a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting at 9:10.
Second it.
No.
No, 9:50.
8:50, yes, I'm sorry.
I have 9:50.
8:50.
Oh, my watch is an hour wrong. 8:50 p.m.
And I second it.
Oh my God. Thank you, Jim. All right. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. All right. Motion carries 5-0. And I gotta fix my watch.
Get rid of all those 19.
Back again to this staff, they always put themselves last and they're like blind, they can't see, and it's like, just get it done. You guys are allowed to have a decent place, yeah.